Hello, I'm back with another video, and I wanted to make a very brief topic, uh, uh, a very brief statement, and I think that it's related to creativity and in artistry, but it's a bold and a sensitive topic, and I want to be very careful about how I approach this with regard to the audiences that may view this, but in recent years, uh, some plants, particularly marijuana, has become legalized in many states in the United States, and different people are being exposed to it. Some prematurely because of the way that it's prevalent, and then some legally, and it's kind of like a new phase in society. It's not new in that the plant has always been with us and will always be with us. But the laws and the attitudes towards different substances and behaviors always shift in societies, and they lean stronger or more lenient in one direction as people go into different phases, and there's some backlash and some leniencies that are probably both healthy and harmful on both sides of that. But I wanted to share some of my experiences. I know that I don't want to say anything that's inappropriate for camera with regard to my past. But I will say that I'm aware of some of the potencies of the plant, and some of the benefits and the detriments that can be experienced when a person is influenced and exposed to it. And first and foremost, I stand by sobriety, and I believe that so there are immense fruits that can be garnered by maintaining a stable, decent, responsible life that is centered around sobriety. At the same time, I believe that, um, as I explained in another video, that there's often a fine line between what's medicine and what's poison. Different substances that are accessible to us legally have a little bit different effects at different phases in a person's development and different circumstances of being partaken in. One of the I've mentioned in some of my videos Arthur Avalon, who is a scholar of some of the ideas of India. I'm not from the culture of India, but I've read some of his works as it explains ideas around some spiritual observances and practices that have been prevalent in India in the past and present, and there are such circumstances where they are written of to have partaken of things like alcohol as a sacrament, as something that brings out certain propensities within a human being in a setting that can be actually geared towards worship and fellowship with other people towards a spiritual objective. And in his writings, he says that the abuse of that substance is frowned upon equally in those circles that embrace that as a form of worship. So I just want to say that that's an example of how there can be different attitudes about a substance, and the substance can have effects that are recognized to be both uh, uh, stimulating and even positive, dare I say, but then also detrimental depending on the employment of it and the circumstance in which it's used. I think that marijuana is very similar. Um, maybe less so because I think that it's overall it's more gentle and healthy than alcohol is. I'm not promoting it by any means. But what I mean to say is that in my experience is that I think that I heard I was watching a popular talk show on alternative media within the last year or so, and there was an expert on marijuana, both in terms of the psychological medicinal uses of the plant, but also the strict physical or utilitarian uses of the plant, like the hemp plant. And the interviewer, and I'm just not citing the interviewer because of the polarization of the show, with its position within politics. But he asked the man, well, what do you think about some of the detriments of the plant, like when young people are partaking it and they're experiencing what he called psychosis? And I want to put forward that a lot of us, as we have lived in the West, we don't truly understand how medicinal plants exist in nature and relate to our human bodies in a truly natural and healthy sense, as I think maybe many of our ancestors did. In the West, we live in a capitalist system that is highly preoccupied with exploiting and tapping all aspects of the natural environment, including us as human beings, to develop profit at any cost. And so many of the medications that are marketed to us and almost pushed on us like a old school drug pusher would do, are are designed in such a way that they're not to actually heal us, but they're to string us along and extort us, while being an actual like kind of like a Trojan horse, where they're marketed to us as something positive, but they're actually damaging our bodies and our minds, while they're obliging us to subsidize the different companies, both in insurance and medicinal, that profit from them as a captive clientele base. That's my opinion, and that's my experience also, personally. But I would say that some plants, like a true a natural plant coming from nature, like marijuana. I believe that I don't know all about a lot of different plants, but in my experience of marijuana is that I have been exposed to the plant at very sensitive points in my development, and some of the effects that it had on me were very inspirational, and were also very frightening, not being not being familiar with that. But what I've come to understand is that I think that the plant of marijuana is an actual very versatile plant that engages the human body on all the different planes of the body. So like as a human, we have like our physical life, we have our mental life, and then we have our spiritual life, which is our kind of like our essence. That our spiritual life is like our essence, that is it's like finer than it's actually finer than the matter that we see, and even so you have like the grades of the human being go from like thicker, denser matter down to finer and finer substance. Like an example would be like you have like your muscle tissue, and then you have like your spinal tissue, and like your nerves of your spinal cord, and it gets I think it gets finer and finer as the functions get more and more sophisticated and sublime, to the point where our spirit and our essence is it's as real as our physical body that we can touch, but it exists in a much finer state, and it to almost transcend matter and be immaterial. And so I think that the marijuana plant, is a true mode of healing from nature itself, and that when this plant is exposed to a human being, it's not just like some people would say it's psychoactive, as though it's they're saying it's psychoactive. Now they're saying it's interacting with the psychological um, aspect of a human being, and it's active, but they also present it as though as it's inert, and it's not conscious. And so what I want to propose is that the marijuana plant is it is it is aware of our needs. As a it's a living being that is aware, that is responding to and is reciprocal with our needs as a human being. And some of the things that it inspires in us that are frightening, like for example, the thoughts of paranoia, the maybe some of the self reflections of that are kind of startling about ourselves, like that we're not that we don't usually have the courage or the ability to look at when we're sober, that we experience in reflecting on while we're under the influence of the plant. But then also like some of some people might experience like a weight or a pounding in the chest. And I think that these experiences and these effects are actually what is taking place as the plant is healing us and addressing the needs of our body. For example, if a lot of the effect, I know I'm not a doctor by any means, but I know that a lot of the effects of medicine and the human body, maybe even nature and the universe itself, are counterintuitive. Where if say you had stress, you had unhealthy stress that is contained within your muscles or your heart. Now it would make sense, like on the surface you think, okay, so I'm gonna partake of marijuana, and this is gonna relax me, and therefore it's gonna heal me by relaxing me. But actually, that's not the function that healing, I don't think, would take. Healing would take the opposite effect, where it's going to stress your heart more, and it's going to engage and grip you in an even more stressful way than you were before. Kind of like how the stress that you undergo during a workout. But then the residual effect about that, as you come through that, past that, you may not be, you may fall asleep, or you sometimes are not actually conscious of how you transition from the state of that influence back into sobriety. But as you come from that, the effect of having gone through even more stress and then coming back to sobriety, that is what takes the stress off of your heart in that particular need of your body, and heals you. So it actually, before it relinquishes these what's affecting you, it actually exacerbates it and makes it worse as a means of healing it. So I think that some of the experiences that people go through when they're calling things like psychosis, I think that this is actually the plant exacerbating the underlying challenges that you're facing mentally. This society that we live in is full of so many pretensions, so many false notions, and so many arbitrary abstractions that really make a lot of our life and our interactions quite absurd and quite false. And the authenticity of our human being responds to this and is oppressed by this. And I think that when this plant is interacting with our human body, we feel like it's making us worse off because it's exacerbating these. But what it's really doing is making us aware of these dilemmas within our blind spot, and through that awareness, gradually we get past what's challenging us, and we become stronger. But this society has a lot of really kind of knee-jerk reactions when it comes to the mind. We're very terrified of our own mind and our own spirit. Almost, we've come a long ways since like the 16 or 1700s. But if you think about it, in a lot of ways, we haven't really come that far from like the real kind of strict puritanical background. If you can imagine the way it might have been living in the colonies in the United States 200 or 300 years ago, a lot of our reflexes and our instincts with things like mental health I read a book that said mental health itself is it's a euphemism and a metaphor that was coined by someone that was involved in persecuting people who were considered witches. So just the history of mental health as an institution, but also some of our social reflexes are terrified and very poor at handling the subtle and spiritual dimensions of a human being. And I think that, and again, I stand by sobriety, but I think that some of these experiences people have with the plant of marijuana are actually the effects of the plant healing a person, but in such a way that it's kind of startling or exacerbating certain things as it's in the process of clearing those things. So I just want to put that out as food for thought. And some of the residual effects of the plant are obviously spiritual growth and creativity. Not necessarily always under the influence of the plant, but some of the effects of having experienced it and gotten past that. And so I would really put forward that anyone for people to really respect plants, natural plants as being medicine and as being as serious as medicine, and to really not abuse any substance, but also to recognize that a true now there are obviously there are hard plants and drugs that we shouldn't be anywhere near, but in my opinion, from what I can handle, but I just think that we need to understand that sometimes healing doesn't look like healing, but it can actually in fact be healing, and that's just food for thought. Peace.